Hello and welcome to the course. This is Indonesia and International Development. And on the first session, we will basically do some introductions of what the course is, what you're expected to do, and basically we'll enjoy the session. So a little bit of the ground rules. Let me show you. Please be on time. Please turn on the video, especially in the beginning of the class, because you will have the university admin who will take attendance. And please mute your microphone upon entry, but at any time, please raise your hand, drop a line in the chat, or unmute yourself should you have any questions or burning comments that you would like to express. So I will explain this further in class, but in this session, we will put emphasis on group work. So there will be group assignments for your final and your midterm. Basically, this class is also working together with a number of institutions that are interested in SDG related topics, Sustainable Development Goals related topics. So you will form a group of 4 to 5 people, and you will be expected to look at the list of topics, see which subject that interests you, and then develop a proposal that you need to turn in as a group during the midterm. And then for your final term exam, you will be expected to submit a presentation on how your research plan has turned out. And as part of the individual assignment, you will have to describe your role and your observation throughout. This is to avoid the free riders in the group. And excitingly, if you are selected as the best group, there will be funding available for your research coming from these institutions, which I will explain in the class. So, what is development? Oh, development is a term that is often freely used and often abused. It is something that people often think as overlapping, and sometimes people have definitions that are contradictory to one another. There are some traditional meanings of development. People normally equate development with historical progress or modernization. So a country that is modern, that is industrializing, that is graduating from agricultural-based economy are the ones that are fully developed. So there are a number of theories as well saying that there are a number of things that qualify as development. We begin with Rostow. Rostow basically says that there are a number of stages of economic growth. First, you begin with a traditional society stage where there's a peasant-landlord relationship. People's primary occupations are farming, agriculture, extracting natural resources. But then there are preconditions for people to graduate from that. It's infrastructure, it's investment before they go to a takeoff stage and they go towards an industrialization stage. Now, the late former President Suharto takes Rostow stages of development and economic growth as part of his 5-year development term plan, or Repalita, if you recall. And after investment is being made for a country to industrialize, there will be a maturity stage where you have high technology, you have consumption driving the economy forward. So this is just a slide to explain what Rostow meant by different stages of growth. So first we begin with subsistence, trying to fulfill our own needs. Then we begin with infrastructure, capitals. Then taking off means there will be industrial revolution. Maturity means technology introduction, disruptive technology. And then the country can live off from its own consumption, and the country will truly prosper. So that's basically Rostow's stages of development. Marx is something different. Marx is basically saying that there are a number of different stages. We begin from the primal, you can imagine the cave people stage, and then we graduate to a feudal stage when there's a landlord-peasant relationship. Then we go towards a capitalist stage where there's workers and capital owners before a nation can be at equality. And Karl Marx basically says that before we graduate to each stage, there will be a clash between the oppressed and the oppressor. So in feudalism, for example, you will see that the peasants will rise against the landowners, and you see the rise of merchants and traders that is better off compared to that relationship. Then you will have a clash, and that clash results in capitalism, where you will have a division of the workers and the capital owners. And one day the workers are going to rise against the capital owners, and there will be equality and what we call a socialism, where the division of roles is divided by a strong state, and therefore the prosperity is divided also equally between citizens. Now, these are two rather old theories of development that define development as different categories of stages that a nation has to go through. However, we saw that it is precipitated or driven by the gap in living standards in 1960s, 1970s, and Marx even began way before that, after the World War II, after World War One even. So Andre Gunder Frank actually see development and underdevelopment as opposite sides of the same coin, meaning that you can be a developed nation, but at the same time you have some parts of your society that is still suffering from underdevelopment. And we also in development practice, we know something that is called intergenerational poverty, meaning that if we do not tackle poverty now, the poor will invest poorly in education, will invest poorly in health, and therefore when their children are at their most productive stage, one, they're not equipped to education that they need to earn sufficient income, and two, they're not in a condition of good health that will allow them to work in productive manner, and therefore poverty can be passed from one generation to the other. And therefore, modern or contemporary meanings of development center around this, the need for people's quality of life to change. The International Labor Organization, for example, puts an emphasis on basic needs, including decent working conditions. And the United Nations Development Program also see that from the quality of life that people can enjoy. And this is a picture of a factory worker in a garment factory. So while this is probably an industry, according to Rostow, that the country is at a takeoff stage, it does not necessarily mean that they are better off depending on their working condition. They can be working long hours. And as you have probably heard or read, in the 1990s, there was a factory in Bangladesh that was devastated by fire. So if their working condition is not safe, then that's not development in the contemporary sense. World Bank even see that as an increase in living standards that spans across different dimensions. It's material consumption, so how you spend your money on education, health, and environmental protection. The latter is very important because there's no point for you advancing in an industrialized society if you are suffering from ill health because of pollution. So World Bank also qualifies inequality in two sense: vertical inequality and horizontal inequality. Vertical inequality means that there is an absolute gap between the poorest level of income and the richest level of income, while horizontal inequality is basically saying that across geographical stage, for example, between Java and Papua, there is inequality in the living standards. Now, with regards to inequality, the world has also seen rising inequality. So the rich actually controls most of the capital, most of the assets, and most wealth in the world today. So with that, people also try to classify countries such as the first world, advanced nations, second world countries. These are emerging nations, industrialized nations, not yet having the income level of the first world countries, and the third world countries such as Indonesia that is developing, aspiring to be industrialized. There are also organizations, institutions that classify countries based on their per capita income. So you are familiar with least developed nations that are at the poor income level. There's also middle income level. There's also high income level, for example. But there are also attempts to look at classifying development stages based on Human Development Index. So you look across broader spectrums such as education and health. Now, development is also a choice, meaning how a country develops depends on the political choices and economic choices that a country makes. With Indonesia, for example, we are focusing on infrastructure, but at the same time, the previous regime criticized this focus as neglecting the social part, meaning the education part, the health part, and social assistance is not yet as advanced as the previous regime. So it is a choice, and there are trade-offs within those choices. Now, in recent collective goal, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, basically there is a recognition that all goals are interlinked. So there can be no poverty as long as hunger um, is no longer present, as long as people are in good health, having good education, that there's gender equality, that there's clean water and sanitation, there's affordable and clean energy, decent work, there's industry and infrastructure, reduce inequalities between levels of income and even case and social status, sustainable cities and communities. Remember, we talk about environmental quality, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water. So we talk about marine debris and oceans, life on land. We talk about forests and agriculture, peace, justice, and strong institutions. We talk about law enforcement, human rights, and basically partnership, recognizing that the government or international organizations cannot do this alone, but it requires partnership from all the stakeholders. So with that, we'll discuss in class what's your definition of development and what criteria do you think is the most critical for a nation to be considered achieving the higher level of development. So, see you in class.